This week on the Art of SBA Lending.
I think that fintechs are creating a demand for banks to step up because banks are still dinosaurs.
Remember, the marketplace has a way of dealing with this too. There was an old tombstone called the Money Store. And
I remember that.
dozens of other banks who have just gotten out there and gotten fast. GE Capital, Heller First Capital. Where are they today?
Well, I'm open to being wrong here, even on my own podcast, Charles. So I would definitely think about that one. Lumos gets brought up on just about every episode these days because they are changing the way SBA loans are underwritten, especially small loans. So I wanted to take a second to explain the power of Lumos. So here's how it works. Lumos' scoring model, Prime Plus, leverages over 1 billion data points to come up with a predicted expected loss. So now you can quickly and efficiently decision each new loan request. Guys, we're talking about auto decisioning on small loans up to $500,000. They'll even sit down with you to build out a customized credit profile that matches the risk tolerance of your specific institution. Lumos is defining the next chapter of SBA lending, and it couldn't be coming at a better time with the rise of the small loan program. By the way, you can use Lumos to score your existing portfolio too, so that you can see where the weak spots are before there's a problem, and that way you know where to focus your resources. Let Lumos take your small business lending to the next level with cutting-edge analytics by going to lumosdata.com and scheduling your demo today. Welcome back to the Art of SBA Lending. The last couple months have been a whirlwind. The new administration came in, the cabinet has been confirmed, and the heads of the departments have gone to work, including the head of the SBA, Kelly Loeffler. And everybody seems to be putting together their list of priorities. Kelly published hers, the American Bankers Association published theirs. But what the people really want is this guy's list of top 10 priorities to improve and protect the 7A program. So here we go. You ready? Number 1, we need to increase the cap to at least $8 million to right size for inflation. There's clearly a lack of capital access in this space, which is why some banks have had to duct tape conventional loans to their SBA loans to meet the needs of the small business owner. But not all banks have the ability to do that. Not only is there a true need for this, but the larger loans have performed better historically, and the fees charged on these loans will help subsidize higher losses on the smaller loans because we do want to make the small loans too. Now, as I like to say, anytime I pitch a deal to credit, this is a no-brainer, and it will happen. It's only a matter of time. Next up, number 2, we need to restore the guarantee fees so that SBA has money in the bank. And we don't want to have a taxpayer subsidy. But I have a twist. I don't think small loans should pay lower percentages. I think it should actually be the opposite. The fintechs have shown that small business owners are willing to pay like 50% APR in order to get the cash faster. And SBA has set us up to be able to underwrite and close 7A small loans in an expedited fashion. But if we do that, we're going to see higher defaults, at least for now, until we figure out how to automate more accurate credit decisioning. And, the SBA guarantee fee, it's being collected to subsidize charge-off, right? So then I would propose that a guarantee fee model might want to be tied to the risk. And the small loans that are not fully underwritten but can get funded faster will carry more risk. Number 3, overhaul the Office of Credit Risk Management. What if, hear me out, you had a question, maybe it was a landlord waiver issue, or maybe it was an affiliation question, or perhaps a servicing issue, and you just picked up the phone to talk to someone at the SBA. Is that crazy? I know some lenders have these backdoor channels, with their contact at the SBA, but why not make a front door? Expand Okram, implement customer service, and while we're at it, let's take a proactive approach to regulating all of these new non-banks that we're allowing into the program. Number 4, all those 4363 error codes? Let's go ahead and send an email to all of those businesses in that database and let them know they have a problem. Instead of letting them go under contract for something, get 3/4 of the way through, only to find out they can't get a 7A loan. Just notify them. Number 5, I think we have to remove the SBA administrator from the president's cabinet. Controversial, I know, but it wasn't there for the first 57 years of the SBA. And, in 2010, Obama made it a cabinet position, which at the time, I could see why, rebuilding the economy was such a critical endeavor at the time. But what we didn't realize was how quickly we are to politicize everything. The SBA has been known as a bipartisan agency, but do we take that for granted? In a couple more cycles, that might not be true anymore. Things started to seem real political to me under Biden. And then when Trump took office, we, the SBA lending industry, are experiencing a lot of disruption simply because there's a new administration. That used to not be the case. Number 6, we don't have a capital access problem. We have a financial literacy problem. If I was the SBA, I'd go to whatever is left over there at the Department of Education, which is ran by a business person and a former SBA administrator, by the way, and figure out how to teach financial literacy in the school systems. Number 7, I think by now we all feel like a new SOP is coming sooner than we might have expected. My fear is that we throw the baby out with the bathwater. Sure, let's go ahead and do what you do. I don't think anyone's going to argue with that. But the intentions of streamlining the program were good. So what I'd hate to see is simply going back to 50-10-06. I think this is where we need to step up as SBA lenders and let the SBA know what's helping and what's not helping. For example, the new affiliation rules. Do we really want someone to be able to go and borrow unlimited SBA dollars in various businesses across different sectors? Do we really need to refinance an SBA loan with an SBA loan where it just saves 10%, on the monthly payment? And do we really need to remove equity injection minimums for startups? I don't think people will be shocked if you roll that stuff back, but the flexibility around titled vehicles, allowing for partial change of ownerships, maybe meeting somewhere in the middle on equity injection verification, these are welcome changes. Number 8, let's look at some legacy rules that don't make a whole lot of sense, and let's be unbiased about it. Does it make sense for the SBA to guarantee a loan to purchase a SaaS business that has no employees? On the other hand, do I really need to create a make-believe lease between my EPC and my OC? I'll trade you my SaaS deals for less paperwork. Do we have a deal? Number 9, since the SBA is being used to carry out the president's campaign promises, let's figure out a practical way to do that. Here's one. You want to promote manufacturing in America? Let's go ahead and run 90% guarantees for loans to businesses in select industries where we know we rely heavily on foreign suppliers. And those businesses who are or are planning to, as a result of this loan, manufacture in the U.S., let's give them that 90% guarantee so that we can make more of those types of loans. My last and final priority for the SBA, go back and read the news articles from March and April 2020. Watch the press conferences. Before we paint a black eye on the SBA, let's remember the situation that we were in. The SBA lending industry mobilized over a weekend to prop up the PPP program. They sacrificed sleep, their health, their sanity to pump out decades worth of lending. Why? To literally save the global economy. We knew there would be fraud. So to come back to us now and point the finger at us, I don't think so. Who let the fintechs in the program? Who was in that room? Who made that decision? Who made the decision to allow everyone to get an EIDL loan? I'm all for questioning these decisions. Let's learn from those mistakes. But I don't want to tarnish the 7A and 504 programs, which have been working beautifully. Now, with me today, I have a lovely panel of Art of SBA contributors. Charles Green, Senior Vice President at Harvest Small Business Finance. Jeannie Yoder, SBA Regional Executive at United Community Bank. And host of the Lords of Lending podcast, Shane Pierson. Folks, welcome to the show. Woo!
Thanks for having us.
All right, Shane, I'm coming to you first. Any priorities you want to add to that list?
I got one that has been on my mind for years, actually, and it has to do with the secondary market sales of SBA loans, to try to get that to line up directly with how USDA works, so that essentially you can take your your SBA guarantee and actually chop it up to be able to be sold in different pools. It increases the return for banks, which of course, me being a sales guy, we always like to see that extra premium come out the back end, but it reduces risk by the poolers being able to spread the risk across different pools for any particular loans, especially the larger loans. I know that becomes a servicing nightmare, and the lords of servicing would be out there to tell you today that that's going to create a nightmare for them, especially in liquidation. But I think that adjustment and creating infrastructure for it could be an interesting role to allow for higher premiums, more aggressive activity, especially in the larger transactions.
Wait, so you're saying you're going to have to dumb that one down for me. So like basically take the guarantee and maybe split it in half and be able to sell to two different buyers?
Yeah, it's just essentially like most of the secondary market that exists in the USDA market, like the USDA pooling side of things, are able to actually reduce or to break up their loans. So if you've ever sold a secondary market loan for any USDA originations, even on $5-10 million transactions, they'll pay an aggressive premium just like they would if it was a $500,000 loan, where we get penalized if it goes over $2 million because the pooling risk increases dramatically for those larger loans to sit in a particular pool. So allowing it to be broken up and spread across, creating tranches.
Got it. So
higher.
So priority one, how can we make more money? Got it.
Nailed it.
Charles, what about you? Do you have any other priorities you want to add to the list?
I've got a bunch, but I'm going to kind of echo your number 10, which my priority is to shut up. I read this thing with Joni Ernest the other day yapping about default rates and everything, and default rates did spring up. But if you compare historical SBA rates to commercial banking rates, or particularly the CMBS marketplace, it's always been lower, and it's held its own. Where your default rates are, as you mentioned, are in smaller loans. And my big suggestion to pivot off that is let's get loans $500,000 and less out of the 7A program. Let them take them EIDL style. The SBA has struggled for years to get our industry to make small loans. And that goes back to the 90s. They came out with the LODOC. I guess you were still in elementary school, but they came out with the LODOC program. And then they came up with the SBA Express program. They were incentivizing, raising maximum rates, doing everything they could to get us to address that marketplace, $150,000, $200,000. And there are some automated players now getting into that, although it's still kind of sluggish and it's anything but easy. But let's just call it what it is. Like you said, a higher risk marketplace where they will pay more. They'll pay a higher rate. They'll pay a higher guarantee fee. But segregate that from the rest of the 7A program and just know you're going to have 10 or 15% losses, which, by the way, the whole 7A program used to routinely lose 12 or 13% annually back in the 70s. So what? Sanctimonious members of Congress who don't like the SBA program with zero loan losses don't count in this debate.
Interesting take, Charles. I like it. Very, very interesting. Are you saying, though, direct lending by the SBA? Are you for that?
It doesn't have to be. And I think the EIDL reminds us why they're not great direct lenders. If you, again, back in those elementary days for you, the SBA used to be a direct lender if you could show you had been turned down by 3 banks. You produced 3 declination letters and they would make the loan, and they always made the loan. That's why you had such large loan losses. I don't think they're equipped for that. But you look at companies like Lendistry, you look at others that are getting into that small loan marketplace using this abbreviated rules. Let them have it. Go with automated players like that who don't have the burden of doing the analysis that we do with the 7A program and 504, and just take the losses. Charge the money. Federal government, as well as most state governments, throw a lot of money into economic development. This is just one more place, and it probably has a faster, hotter return than most of the others.
Yeah, I've been saying that now for a while. Like we we have to operate in zero subsidy for whatever reason. It was just decided upon, and we kind of like that in a sense, just because I want to tell you a quick story. I was at the BDO retreat earlier this year, sitting next to Dustin Baker and one of the Shatterbox learners that he had recruited into the SBA industry. Her name is Sarah. And Sarah told me that she closed $10 million in her first 6 months as a BDO. I look over at Dustin and I asked him, why would anyone hire an $8 to $12 million producer anymore? Sarah is one of many Shatterbox learners who has proven that you can take a smart young person with no SBA experience, teach them SBA, and in many cases, they will outproduce seasoned BDOs right out of the gate. Why are we so willing to hire a mediocre BDO with a 6-figure salary when you can hire your next rock star, someone with unlimited potential, for half the price? You have no more excuse. Shatterbox has created the best learning platform ever created for the SBA lending industry. Join the 20 plus Shatterbox clients who have already taken the plunge on building talent from the ground up. I'm going to leave a link down below just for Art of SBA listeners. So if you want to learn how Shatterbox can help you hire and invest in bright young talent without breaking the bank, reach out and set up a discovery call today. Like right now, for example, you come look at the 7A program, you can't touch us. I mean, you can, I guess, if we're at a subsidy, which we might be because we didn't collect guarantee fees. But, smart people, I think, will look at this and say, well, if you look at the last 10 years, I mean, it's a net positive for SBA. So let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater, to use that one again. But Jeannie, I want to get you in here. Like, what do you think in terms of priorities? Do you have anything you want to add?
Recently, I read that the SBA may take in consideration to rolling the educational loans in with us. Have you guys read that article at all? Do you know which one I'm talking about?
You're talking about the like educational loans?
Education, like the student
Oh,
loan.
no, I thought they were putting that with the Treasury.
Well, the article I read was interesting because they mentioned the Treasury, but they also mentioned the SBA. So I am just very curious about, in general, where the next 4 years takes us. And to your point, to pivot off one of your points, Ray, I do not want us to take 5 steps forward to take 10 steps backwards. Implemented a lot of good changes in our program. For example, the equity verification, for example, do what you do. I do like the fact that, for example, do what you do, rolling some of that back, because I think from a banking standpoint, it puts all the bankers on even playing ground. I think sometimes when the rules are a little too loose, not all banks are operating from the same rules. And sometimes I hate to use the word, sometimes I feel like they could be not necessarily making it up as you go, but some are just a lot more loose and a lot less conservative than some others.
Yeah, and I mean, the very nature of do what you do is essentially do what you do conventionally, which I never
Right.
really understood that. And then you have all these non-banks who don't have conventional, and it's like, so how do you do what you do so that you're basically just writing your own rule book at that point? And while introducing new people to the program.
I like the program. I like the SOP. I like some of the changes we've made, but I also understand some of the changes may be a little too fast, too furious, so to speak. So I can see it dialing it back. I just don't want us to dial it back with a
Right.
sledgehammer.
This
Exactly.
kind of makes my head spin because
Yes.
for years, the administration wanted to propose to roll all this back is in the same party that's been lecturing all of us about how the private sector is superior to the government. The government's the problem.
Right.
But now we're going to roll it, change it, everything.
I'd like for us to do it with a scalpel and not a sledgehammer.
Agreed. But remember, the marketplace has a way of dealing with this too. There was an old tombstone called the Money Store. And
I remember that.
dozens of other banks who have just gotten out there and gotten fast. GE Capital, Hiller First Capital. Where are they today? Dead, gone, forgotten.
No, exactly.
Well, Money Store sold. It's interesting. I mean, the risk has always been with the do what you do is like you have the ability now to go be crazy, but the truth is 99% of us didn't go crazy because we know better. But it's the one or two bad actors that you always get a little bit concerned about. And I mean, I'm of the mindset that the changes were not tied to the defaults. The defaults that we're seeing now have more to do with interest rates, but it's being used as fodder to roll it back. And some people are just not arguing because they want some of these rules rolled back. But the one unifying thing that I think unites everybody is increasing the cap on 7A. I have not heard anyone against that. Do you guys think that's going to happen?
I want to. I agree with you when the point of view you made earlier about the cost of inflation, the cost. If you think about a ground up construction project that let's say 6-7 years ago may have cost $3 million, is probably what, 5 million now. I mean, the cost of lumber, the cost of construction, your subcontractors, it's outrageous. So a lot of even the new ground up constructions with their first time borrowing money are right at the cap or exceeding the cap.
Yeah, I think increasing to 8 million, it's not really just about expanding the program. I think it's restoring like purchasing power and like the relevance of the loan program to fill the middle market that's kind of expanded, over the last 15 years. What was it, 2010 when they did that last? Is that when they raised to the 5 million cap?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you got a 15-year period where I think there was close to 40% CPI inflation, 47% or something. So you look at that, just that trend alone, it definitely has created a gap by just sitting there where there's plenty of businesses now, especially if you try to roll in anything that includes the exit of in the acquisition world, the exit of somebody who has a property as well that they want to sell. Now you're well over 5 million. I just got one today that was a acquisition that only a few players can actually come to bat for as far as lenders go. So there's only a few out there that actually do truly play the pari passu aggressive space. And I think it's really not equitable for the market and really doesn't help the borrower. It can, by doing so, creates a better competitive situation for other lenders to come to the table and I think in the end benefit the borrower.
Yeah, because I can't do pari passu lending. However, I get every single week somebody comes to me assuming I can do it. With a $7, $8, $9 million deal. And I'm like, I can't do it. And they're coming to me as if this is something that is commonplace, but really there's a few players in that space, but it's definitely a need. And I think there's not a huge appetite to go there for a while because the big concern was small loans. And so when we're trying to promote small loans, how are we going to go and hook a brother up with a 10 milli, type of deal? So now we're more in Doge mode, and that's more about dollars and cents. Now, hey, here's a revenue generator for the program. Here's a way to make money on the program. Lower risk deals, more guarantee fees. Now we're talking. Now I think there's actually agreement on to do this. So whenever the next, bill or whatever that's appropriate to tack this on, I'm hoping they add it in there because we need those guarantee fees.
Ray, it also supports that goal of increasing onshore manufacturing. We need larger loans to respond to that.
Mm-hmm.
That should be tomorrow. Tomorrow, that should just be into effect tomorrow. We'll go to 10 million if you're going to start building some stuff in here. I mean, that's the type of stuff we're talking about with let's incentivize. I mean, it's essentially because they changed international trade loan or Department of International Trade to the Department of Manufacturing and Trade. Right. So that is taking the president's wishes essentially and injecting it into the SBA. So now how do we actually get that accomplished? I said 90% guarantees because I'm not that creative and that's what we had on ITL. So I just put that there. But is there any better ways to do that, you think, to actually promote manufacturing here in the US? Anyone?
Lend them money.
Come on, guys. This is your chance. This is your chance to get creative here and build whatever the equivalent of the ITL program is for manufacturing.
It's complicated because of labor costs. I mean, I think that's the big thing.
Maybe give them some type of tax incentive.
Well, we're at the SBA though, so we can't. How do we do it with the SBA? Shane, what were you going to say?
Honestly, I think if you can lean back to some of the other programs that are out there right now, the working capital programs, every one of those manufacturers needs a line of credit. Like the time it takes to actually manufacture, get the product to market, to the actual end purchaser, whether it's wholesaler or retail, they need the capital to be able to also turn that product. So just giving them the ability to get in, the working capital load is going to be aggressive. And there's only a few lenders in that space also that can help float the working capital need to actually manufacture anything. So we can get them the asset, but we're not going to help them really keep the fuel in the engine to help it churn and turn. I think that some enhancement to that and simplification of the servicing elements for lenders to make it more accessible by all lenders that are doing these loans, I think could really be a good way to shore up the gap.
So Shane, you're talking a companion working capital loan or line of credit?
Line of credit in particular, like just one that I think fits particular industries. It could be adaptations to the working capital pilot program, which I've never been able to touch. It could be an enhancement to the express line of credit, and maybe having particular NAICS codes be able to receive a higher guarantee on that express loan, so that it lures a bank to want to do it more because it helps hedge some of the risk out. So I'm big on risk reward. That's why I kind of brought up the other concept of making it a little bit wealthier to do larger loans, because increasing to 8 million, I don't know many poolers that love buying $5 million loans. Now all of a sudden you're doing an $8 million loan, just the risk in secondary market sale goes up, right? That you're not going to get as much on that. So banks are going to be less apt, and it also creates liquidity problems on balance sheets of banks. So I think how does that trickle down to impact in those different areas?
That's a great point. And then that's where your actual number one priority then becomes that much more important, because then you can start splitting up those guarantees and selling. Because you're right. I mean, I think you would probably, on a P plus 275 deal, on an $8 million deal, I bet you get 6% or something like that. Very low.
They'd chop it down really, really low to the point where it's still making money. Don't get me wrong. The bank's making plenty of cash. But I think the liquidity play and the risk reward element isn't quite as beautiful on that to really get people to go after it aggressively. So make the carrot a little bigger.
You got a lot of moving parts here, though, and the working capital is a great point, Shane. But in asset-based lending, that's a lot of servicing work, which is why it's so expensive, because you're not just routinely downloading a bunch of invoices and advancing a check. Somebody underwrites all that. Somebody looks at it. Somebody ages it, and they monitor. You got to remember, NAFTA started in 96 or 97. So I mean, this ship has been going the other way for a long time. On the secondary market side, though, how about we get the Federal Reserve to help and come in there and they buy these pools of all these $6, $7 million, $10 million loan, and then they could redistribute it in tranches to these pools who want to, go for their investors with a smaller piece, sort of like a B&I thing, except you got one big buyer out there who is part of the administration's solution.
Definitely create competition for all these buyers that have been picking it up. That helps raise the premium on it, which again I think trickles down to that risk.
Boys will be boys. Okay.
I do like that. I do like the idea of a line of credit, and I should have put that on my list, because it's one of those things that every business needs that has a cash cycle, and yet no one wants to give it one. And I get asked all the time, and I'm like, well, there's no one out here going out for that business. It's like, we'll do it if it wins us this deal or gets us that relationship. But is there a way to, instead of having human service lines of credit, have AI do it?
Here you go.
Don't you think we're going to be out of a job fast enough?
Well, all right. So here's an idea. So I mentioned Okram. Now I'm not, I don't actually know what I'm talking about when I say this. I just say things on the internet, right? So, but isn't it weird how we have to underwrite, close, service loans as PLP lenders, and if there's a problem, we call SBA, for the purchase of the guarantee, or if during an audit, we get dinged here and there. But if we have any questions while we're going through the underwriting, closing, servicing, you have 70 questions, which is, we've all used it. But what if the SBA is truly set up to support lenders? Obviously, this would mean they need a lot more resources, and it's just rethinking how it's done. what if it was like a sort of more of a supportive, you can just pick up the phone and ask a question and get an answer type of thing? Is that crazy?
The problem is with 7A questions, they can give you an answer in writing and it could be wrong and you're stuck with the result, like the IRS. So I would love to get that, even just using the existing channel, but saying when they give us an answer, they have to live with that result too, because if we make a decision based on their explanation or their interpretation, then we don't get dinged for it and denied a guarantee.
And denying the guarantee is something that is very rare. However, Charles, you brought up a good point. Like, will that become less rare? I mean, that's like, it's almost like if you hire someone to build something for you as a subcontractor and they don't quite do it the way you wanted them to do it, so you just stiff them. I don't know if this sounds familiar to anyone, but like, could the SBA, or has the SBA ever done it that way where they're actually trying to get out of paying the guarantee, which would obviously be just devastating for a lender who did everything right, but forgot to dot this one I or cross this T that has nothing to do with why the loan defaulted? Is that a concern?
I think you just described the daily nightmare that every credit manager and underwriting and closing manager go through when they look at files. I mean, I come at it from my overly passionate, aggressive stance of, oh, this can be done better and faster and everything else. But in the end, I think they all feel the weight of the previous audits that they've all gone through, to the point of PTSD coming up every time they look at a loan. And it's always hard for me to remember that when I'm talking through deals, that they're all scared to death that their guarantee is not going to be intact. And so they're always going to like err on the side of caution because they have no support other than going GP and waiting 2.5 to 3 weeks, and who knows what the hell they come up with. So I think that I think the element of adding something like that is definitely possible. And it's not that hard. I mean, you can go through the outbox of SBA 7A questions. You could, I know we made a little joke about AI, but you could literally upload all of that data into AI, have it analyze it, have it cross-check it against SOP regulation. You just got to give it the correct prompting. And I'm not talking about just ChatGPT. I'm talking just taking that data, uploading it to an LLM, and literally build your own SBA Jeannie that can answer these questions and get smarter every time it asks something. You can create a redundancy. You don't need 1,000 people answering these questions. You can have 2 that are just doing fact checks on things that are going out the door at any given point in time based off stuff that gets red flagged. And now you have that engine. That's not a hard thing to turn on. We have all the data. Guaranteed they back up all those emails, all those responses, everything that's ever been given is stored in their database. They just need to extract it. Hell, use one of Musk's kids that he just brought out of college to go and analyze everybody working for Doge. Just flip one of them into SBA and say, hey, turn this on really quick for us. I guarantee you they could do it in less than a month. And now that tool is something readily available to every lender on the planet to just go in and like a chatbot, walk through the dialogue. It saves that chat. You can print it off, put it in your file so Okram knows the whole dialogue along with anything you upload. Now you've got a smart attorney in a digital format available to every lender to just try to hedge out some of that risk, to make them less scared. Because I get it. It's a heavy weight to carry as a closing or underwriting or credit manager that has to kind of just roll off the times you've been punched in the face by Okram the last time they did an audit.
Can you imagine 7 AI questions? I think, eventually you have to get there. But it's crazy though, because, well, first of all, the question, it would probably be the first thing to like actually stump AI, because it's like, wait, this contradicts itself. But and same with GP, it's like sometimes they're wrong. And in fact, that's a whole nother problem in and of itself, because no one's perfect. We're all humans, and the government has government employees in there working, and when you do such drastic shifts from one SOP to the next, and then here we go again, people do make mistakes. And so it's just a matter of now remembering this and saying, okay, yeah, all of this stuff was happening during the time. This loan defaulted because the guy got hit by a train. Your EPC-OC lease is 24.5 years. What do I do? That's a denial. And I'm thinking now, I would like to give the benefit of the doubt to say, hey, let's all just be reasonable here. But now I'm looking at like PPP And at the time, I was like, no one's going to like, this is self-certify. Are you sure? And then here we are. And it's like exactly the worst case scenario that you would expect. So people, the trust has to be rebuilt. And we all have to be working together on here. And this is like a good point where we just need to just pause and just like, let's just rethink this. Like, how can we do this better? We have this like sort of pivot point right here in the government, and the SBA is part of the government. So this is why I want to have a conversation and just kind of figure out like let's look beyond just the surface level stuff, and let's use this as an opportunity to really fix the big problems and make this thing a lot more attractive, because only a quarter of banks are using it right now, the SBA programs.
So raise your point. That's why I hope that we go in with a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. Because if we don't do it the right way, then we're going to try to do it fast and furious. And I just feel like so many steps that we've made in the positive direction I don't want us to, like you said, throw the baby out the window or out of the bathwater.
I think that's going to have to be the title or the thumbnail or something, a baby. And I'm going to put Shane's head or face as the baby, and we're going to throw him out with the bathwater.
That works.
I have your permission. Okay, good.
Let's remember about this number of banks participating is that we probably have a quarter of the number of banks today as we had in 1990. So we've been shedding banks faster. We've been shedding participants. The other thing about this insurance or denial of the guarantee, we know 7A is a credit insurance program, but I've had that feeling growing for the last 10 years that they've been increasingly getting to the gotcha stage. And I don't know, I feel it a lot in my company. It's just all the dark warnings and everybody's so paranoid about, this, that, or the other. That just doesn't have anything to do with the credit quality or the probability or causation of default or, deficiency. But,
right. That's a concern.
I worry about that more, as I expressed to you, with this new administration, because they are about revenge, and whatever their perceptions are, real or imagined, of the market, the world, the economy, the government agency, they're going to come down that with a vengeance without really looking to see what they're throwing out, what's in that bathwater. And that's, by the way, I want to, sorry to interrupt, I want to get back to your goal about taking the administrator out of the cabinet. I think is a mistake, because if you knew how political it was before the administrator was in the cabinet, when the SBA was just one more of the 7,000 agencies out there, and we were on a subsidy model for those years, and we ran out of money a lot of years, and you had David Stockman, Ronald Reagan wanting to get rid of the SBA because it didn't matter. You had Newt Gingrich trying to get rid of the SBA because it didn't matter. It makes a difference that cabinet level gives recognition to this is an important part of our economy.
Well, I'm open to being wrong here, even on my own podcast, Charles. So I would definitely think about that one, because that's one that just came to me last night. So I could be wrong, but the reason I was saying that was just because, like, I don't remember it being so like, oh geez, we're all the way on this side now. This is the president. Now we're going all the way over here, and that's how I feel like I've been bouncing around the last couple of years. Whereas the first 10 years of my career, I just feel like it was barely any changes, and we went from different presidents and different parties. And now I feel like it's gotten more political.
There's a commonality to that story. If you just self-examine with one administration that's changed and come back. So I don't think we were ever that radically different between succeeding administrations ever, until somebody comes in with just a headstrong, knows how to fix everything better than anybody does.
I'm sensing a little Charles, classic. All right, well, we know where Charles sits. All right, let's move on. So this is the big one for us, guys. I mean, look, we do this every day. Is this new SOP coming this year? Is it happening? Should we brace?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
We can play bingo with that too. We should come up with like different ideas of the likely changes that they're going to throw in there based off the the energy level of the people that have, or all the comments that are coming down. Like, what else are they going to change? That might be a fun game you should play, Ray.
It's going to be tough because you're going to want to keep some stuff. You're going to want to go back on others. And who's in charge of this? I mean, who's writing this thing? I mean, you know, nobody's called me for help. I mean, you know, how is this going to get done? Like, do you guys think we'll land closer to 50.10.6 or 50.10.7.1?
Your guess is as good as mine.
Well, if you look at, I think it's going to be all dependent upon like what had happened beforehand. We know that they're coming after fintechs. They feel like that's where the pocket of risk, all of it lives. I don't necessarily entirely agree with that, but it's, you know, they said that's where a lot of this default is coming from. And so I don't think it's substantiated, like Charles had said earlier. But with how high defaults were in the past, we're really nowhere near touching what it was before. I think just all we need is the subsidy offset, like one of your other points, getting that guarantee fee back in to help offset those losses, and you write it in. It's cost of doing business essentially, and we know that has always been with smaller loans. So you have that element that I think is going to get. You might see some rollbacks or some redirects, but I don't think any of us can deny that the business acquisition market, the silver tsunami mentality of what's really happening, the transfer of wealth over the next 10 to 15 years that's going to happen, does require this program to be, I think, further expanded. Carefully use Jeannie said, scalpel. We need that. And we need like brick by brick lays here, not like just letting the path and the bridge fall down and everyone run across. But it does take some more precision, something that caters better to transfers. The idea of manufacturing trades or acquisitions and lines of credit, creating instruments that help that transition is going to be the best way to do it. Because I just don't see the private sector or the private lending world filling the void. The risk is just so high.
No.
The transition.
I do not see the scalpel thing happening.
It's going to get ugly.
You guys are so, you know, it's like looking through rose-colored glasses. Like, what tells you from the past 5 years that this is going to be a scalpel approach? I mean, come on. The first thing they're going to do is just Control F for what is it? Similarly sized. Okay, and they're going to change that with real guidance. And then the next thing I think they're going to have to look at was raising the small loan to 500 appropriate? I mean, no one's even doing that, but like you're going to have to look at the small loans and kind of figure out how to address that, right? And then it's going to go into the more third layer stuff, which is the stuff that really no one can point to any issues that it's causing, but it's just like, why did we do that? Some of the stuff I mentioned, like refinancing SBA with SBA, I'm surprised that didn't send the secondary market into a tailspin, just because I could just like, I'm a P+2 lender. Shane's a P+3 lender. I'm just example. I just know that in a year I can just go refinance out Shane's entire portfolio because it's going to save exactly 10%. And by the way, there's no guarantee fees. So if I do that on only $1 million loans right now, I could do that. There's no fee. And all of a sudden his prepays are spiking. Investors catch wind. And it's like, who even asked for this? And so, I mean, that's one that, I mean, I like the flexibility. Don't get me wrong. But like, are they going to go that deep and just say, hey, you know what? This affiliation stuff, you know, technically it opens the door to where somebody can have $100 million worth of SBA loans across multiple different sectors. No one's done it, but they can. So I don't know. What do you think that they're going to go that deep and actually just roll back, you know, a lot of these other guidelines that are new? I mean, partial change of ownership, I think, has been great. I would hate to see that one go. What do you think, Jeannie?
You know, Ray, I've been in PA for 15 years, so I honestly don't know. And you're right. To Charles's point, the administration, it changes. If I had a crystal ball, I wouldn't be in this business.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, so yeah, we're all sitting here not knowing, but all right, so let's move on. But I will say this, the PPP stuff and the fraud stuff really does irk me, just because I know, I was there and, we talked about it on prior episodes, but this whole, a couple of the tweets out there from Elon and whatnot. And, I'm a fan of Elon, I've got his stuff. I've got the Tesla. I've got all the toys. I even just ordered something new, a little mini robot just to put on my desk. But when he comes at me through the SBA stuff, I get very irked. Last question, and then we'll start wrapping it up. Do you guys think the risk mitigation framework that they put into place to combat all of the, if you're only listening, I'm doing like massive air quotes on this, but like
amazing.
is that we implemented the risk mitigation framework to combat all of the non-existing fraud in the 7A program? It's maybe not non-existing, but like we didn't know nowhere near the PPP and EIDL. Do you think that makes it through?
Ray, I think criminals are very savvy. I think if you really want to be a criminal's going to figure out a way, unfortunately. If you've been in, whether it's consumer banking, commercial banking, SBA banking, I hope that the measurements continue to stay in place, but it's going to happen, unfortunately.
I want my PLP back. Any final words, fellas? Shane?
Go easy. That's all that it is. It's a program that is delicate. There are some aggressive changes, but don't kill momentum. That would be my only thing. Is find a way to not just slow the roll of everyone that's really trying to make progress. There's a lot of I think that fintechs are creating a demand for banks to step up because banks are still dinosaurs, fossilized with 30-year-old processes. And I guess they are tried and true. Don't get me wrong. Like everybody's rolling off of what they know works, and it's an easy to default back to. But there has to be change, and it's gonna happen one way or another. And it's coming through both technology and policy.
You guys are so calm and chill and mature and level-headed in this. I came in guns a-blazing, and you guys have really calmed me down here. So I appreciate that. Charles, why don't you close us out here? Any last words on all this craziness?
Well, I think this new administration has demonstrated in the last 8 weeks that it's shoot first, and then when the smoke clears, who's standing. And I hope that they're learning enough lessons that they're getting pushback from courts. They're getting a lot of town hall meetings with members of Congress, and everybody's raising hell and demonstrating all over the country. I hope they will slow down and sort of be more deliberate about, facts rather than just ideology to come in there and someone's big idea about all of these hundreds of agencies and changes that need to be made without having an understanding about exactly what that agency does. And I think we're in that boat. We're not that big of an agency. What are we, $40 billion of credit. So that's all you hope for. And if it all falls apart and gets shot down and it's a $20 billion program in 2 years, well, and hopefully 4 years from now, we'll have another change and we'll be back up to a $60 billion program. Was it Robert Frost who said the one thing he's learned about life is it goes on?
That it does.
Ray, we want everything to happen with a scalpel and not a sledgehammer.
Scalpel and babies in bathwater. That's what we're talking about here today at the Art of SBA Lending. Contributors, thank you so much for joining me today. That does it for this episode of the Art of SBA. Until next time, ta-ta. All right, that's it for this week's episode. If you want more SBA content, you can sign up for our monthly newsletter and check out our sister shows, SBA Today and The BDO Show. We'll leave a link in the show notes. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an episode of The Art of SBA Lending. Ta-ta.